It's the central paradox of education. A teacher provides intense, hands-on direction for one reason, so that eventually the student won't need them. But when schools try to actually create this independence, they often resort to a superficial fix. They remove the teacher from the equation, enforce quiet in the room, and label this solitary work as independent learning. This creates a problem. A student sitting in silence, faithfully checking off boxes on a highly detailed worksheet, is not self-directing. They are executing what we can call procedural independence. They don't need someone standing over them, but every action is dictated by external instructions. Even giving students a menu of choices falls short. Picking between 3 prepackaged assignments might feel like agency, but the student hasn't learned how to generate those options, evaluate alternatives, or figure out what to do if none of the choices actually work. These are false independences. You can't just remove a teacher's scaffolding and expect a completed building. Doing so leaves the student mimicking autonomy, while still entirely reliant on the invisible structure the teacher left behind. Physical isolation is not the same thing as capability. If you give a learner total freedom without first developing their internal capacity, you don't get discovery. You get confusion, you get avoidance, and arbitrary choices. Which brings us to the actual diagnostic question. Look at this text from the personal theater system. What must a learner possess internally in order to act meaningfully without continuous external direction? The answer is that true independence isn't the absence of external structure. It is the successful internalization of it. The learner has to absorb the routine into their own mind. If we expect a student to survive and adapt without our guidance, our primary job as educators is to systematically transfer our external structures into their internal habits. We can see the roots of how this transfer works by looking at Noam Chomsky's foundational distinction in linguistics. He separated the mere reproduction of forms you've already seen from the possession of an underlying structure, one that allows you to generate entirely new responses to situations you've never encountered before. We combine that with Konstantin Stanislavski's concept of an inner theater. In his view, a role is a continuous rehearsal of expectations, attention, and physical actions until the internal framework and the external performance fuse together seamlessly. These ideas merge into what we call the cycle of mastery. Skill acquisition is not a linear staircase that ends with a final test. It is a multi-iterative circular routine. A learner always starts in initial immersion, marked by confusion, discomfort, and an inability to filter out noise. From there, they move into acclimation, where the environment becomes recognizable, and they begin to understand the purpose of the activity. Next comes routine flow, where the student performs competently, but still requires active, conscious management to keep everything on track. Finally, they reach full internalization. The capacity drops into the active self, available on demand, without needing to be consciously reconstructed every single time. Through this cycle, the master acquires an internal asset that survives the specific musical passage or theatrical scene at hand. They internalize the process of learning itself, building a framework that allows them to independently tackle entirely unfamiliar problems. This brings us to a counterintuitive rule for independent learning. As this text states directly, mastery is unconscious. Conscious control is severely limited. As you can see outlined here, it is narrow, it is comparatively slow, and it can only attend to a tiny fraction of a complex performance at once. If an actor tries to consciously calculate every facial muscle, vocal inflection, and physical mark in real time, they become instantly paralyzed. By pushing routine actions down into the subconscious, the mind frees up its active spotlight. Conscious attention is no longer bogged down supervising the basics. Instead, it becomes instantly available to notice anomalies, adjust to a fellow performer, or strategize a new approach. A truly independent learner does not remain hyper-aware of every single step they take. They have built an automated inner stage that handles the foundational work, leaving their conscious mind entirely free to navigate the unknown. When we scale this up to a room full of 30 students, the dynamic shifts. A single teacher cannot possibly act as the central nervous system for that many independent learners simultaneously. Every decision cannot pass through one adult. To solve this, we look to Maria Montessori's concept of the prepared environment. The teacher deliberately relocates their intelligence out of their own head and embeds it into the physical space, into the routines, the designated zones, and the materials themselves. This enables what we call productive interdependence. Rather than 30 kids sitting in isolated silence, the students become the environment for each other. One musician sets a pulse so another can take a rhythmic risk. One student's clarifying question dismantles an assumption shared by 5 peers. They listen, adapt, and set the pace in real time. In a mature classroom, independence is a collaborative act. The students are actively and unconsciously rewriting the shared stage for one another, which renders constant, direct intervention from the teacher completely unnecessary. But every prepared classroom environment is temporary. Eventually, the class ends, the production closes, and the mentor goes home. Sooner or later, every student steps into an unprepared stage. They enter a workplace with poor routines, chaotic organization, and absolutely no assigned structure. This is the ultimate objective of the personal theater system. The carefully prepared environment of the classroom must eventually travel with the learner, taking permanent residence in their mind as internalized habits, symbols, and structures. True educational independence guarantees that when the external world completely fails to provide a script, the student is not left waiting for instructions. They have already built the inner stage required to confidently write their own.